Hi, everybody. Welcome to Phil and Dave's Excellent Adventures. Just Dave here. Today I'm talking about the movie Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. This is going to be a spoiler review, so if you are concerned about spoilers, I would suggest you go and watch the movie first before you watch this review. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is the sequel to Aquaman. In it, Aquaman has to stop Black Manta from using an evil trident to destroy the world, I think. Yeah, that sounds right. As far as what I liked about it, overall the cast was good. I like Jason Momoa. He did a good job as Aquaman. Patrick Wilson in particular was really good as Orm. I think he's just a really good actor, and he's able to take these kind of ridiculous, kind of goofy, silly situations and deliver these crazy, ridiculous lines with like a certain amount of like believability that is really impressive. I really liked him in this. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, always good in here as David Kane, Black Manta. He's always great. I always like seeing him in anything. He was played Dr. Manhattan in the Watchmen TV show. He's been in some other stuff. Temuera Morrison as Tom Curry, Arthur's dad. Yeah, he's not in it a bunch or anything, but I thought his acting was pretty good, especially compared to Boba Fett, where sometimes his acting was a little not so great for me. I thought he was pretty good in this. Martin Short has a brief cameo as Kingfish, just a voice role as Kingfish. He was pretty fun. I didn't recognize it was him at first, but it was a fun character. I enjoyed that. Nicole Kidman as Atlanta. She's not in it much. She's only got a couple scenes, but she's always a good actress. She's always good. And I really like John Rhys Davies as the Brine King. I forgot he must have been in the first one. I just completely forgot. I don't really remember the first movie that well, but yeah, he's great. He's got a great voice, and it's a funny character. It's a real fun kind of character. I really enjoyed it. Score was done by Rupert Gregson Williams. He's done Hotel Rwanda, Hacksaw Ridge, Wonder Woman, and then after Click, he did all of the Happy Madison movies, as far as I can tell. Trixie, you okay, baby girl? Mhm. So yeah, decent enough score. Nothing that was amazing or anything, but nothing that really bothered me or irritated me. Cinematography was by Don Burgess. He's done Forrest Gump, Castaway, Spider-Man, the 2002, 2003 one, and the first Aquaman. I like the opening to this. They sort of do a little recap of, Arthur's like, hey, here's what I've been up to. I have a kid now, and me and my wife are going around doing this and doing that. Like, that's fun. I liked it. It was a nice little, hey, here's what's going on kind of thing. I thought the costume design in this overall was really good. And I liked it in the first one as well. Aquaman's costume, on paper looks kind of goofy and silly. They managed to, I think, do a pretty good job of recreating what it looks like, in the comics, but also it looks believable and cool and badass. And he changes costumes at some point. He gets like a color changing costume or a camouflage thing or whatever, which apparently is from the comics and kind of makes sense, I guess. Octopuses can change their color, so cuttlefish, why not? But yeah, again, of course, they do that to sell toys, but I thought Orm's costume was pretty cool looking throughout it as well. So yeah, I really like the costumes in this. I think they look good. I think most of the hair effects were pretty good. They're underwater, so their hair is constantly moving around and stuff. And I thought in particular the hair effects on Jason Momoa were pretty good and pretty good on Orm as well. I thought there was a lot of really cool imagery and scenery here. We would see these kind of beautiful underground kind of landscapes, seascapes. I like look really nice and really beautiful. And it's not something I think I liked a lot about the first Aquaman movie. It was just the world building and this kind of like world that you're taken into and that you can see and everything. It's really cool. There's even some stuff on land that they see that's pretty cool, like this kind of giant area with these huge flowers and huge insects and stuff like that. Cool stuff. I really liked it. There's some pretty good fight scenes in here, particularly the sort of hand-to-hand combat fighting scenes between like Patrick Wilson and Jason Momoa and some of the other characters. Well done, well choreographed, and they both seem like they're very capable of handling that kind of stuff. I enjoyed that Aquaman was a father. I thought that was just interesting because it's not something I've seen a lot of. I've seen it in comics, but as far as live action movies, I can't think of one off the top of my head, at least, where the superhero is a father. And so like that's cool. That could be interesting, I think, especially if you have a husband and wife superhero team trying to raise their kids, especially if their kids don't know they're superheroes. That kind of a twist on the I don't want my parents to know I'm Spider-Man thing, like that could be kind of fun, I think. Um, I did like the sort of there's a storyline between Orm and Dolph Lundgren's character Nereus. Where at first Nereus kind of doesn't trust him and won't give him a gun and everything, but then they kind of have a little arc, and then toward the end he does give him a gun and like he kind of accepts him, and I like that. There's also a funny scene where Orm goes to fight Black Manta, and Aquaman warns him like, "Oh, he's stronger now than he used to be." And Orm's like, "I don't care." And he goes at him and just immediately gets knocked down, and that was pretty funny. And I think the theater actually appreciated that one. We all kind of laughed at that. I did like the stuff with the orichalcum in terms of just using it as sort of an allegory for climate change and the way that we are kind of already abusing the planet and polluting it and everything else. I'm like, okay, cool. I like that idea. And it makes sense that, Aquaman and his people would be upset about people doing that. And I like that they even kind of tied it into them. It was the Lost Kingdom who discovered the orichalcum and kind of did start to destroy the planet, but then realized the error of their ways and kind of stopped, although they eventually got destroyed. So I don't know, whatever. And there's also a thing with a bug where Arthur tricks Orm into eating a bug. Yeah, it's kind of funny. They do a little thing, a mid-credit scene at the end where he comes back around and eats it. Yeah, well done. Patrick Wilson sells it well enough, I think. So yeah, I like that. That was fun. As far as what I didn't like about the movie, I like Jason Momoa. I think he did a pretty good job as Aquaman. But there's definitely times in this movie where he's a little annoying to me, which is funny because normally I think he's kind of funny and charming, and I like he's kind of like frat bro kind of energy. But yeah, in this movie, there's definitely times where I feel like he was just trying a little too hard, or he was just came across as just kind of annoying to me. And I think it was just, especially like the dynamic between him and Orm, which could be a fun idea. And it sounds like there is on paper, I understand why that would be fun, but just the way it worked in the movie, it just seemed kind of crammed in. It didn't quite work for me. And Dolph Lundgren, I like Dolph Lundgren. He's an amazing dude, very impressive guy. He was like the captain of the U.S. men's decathlon team in 1998. He's got an IQ of 160 allegedly. Got a biochemical engineering degree. He's a Rhodes Scholar. He's a very impressive dude. But his acting in general is not very great. And in this, I feel like his accent is just all over the place. There's times where it sounds like he's kind of trying to do a British accent, but then other times where he's talking more normal. And I'm just like, all right. Um, I think too that the CGI in this movie is really quite bad. Like I said, some of the hair stuff was okay, especially with Momoa, but with like Amber Heard's hair, I noticed, and with Dolph Lundgren's, the red-haired people, it looked pretty bad to me, and then just everything else looked really bad. Like some of the like locales and scenery they would show would look pretty good, but then they'd get up closer and there'd be like an interaction. There's one where there's like these giant flowers and these giant bugs flying around. Looks pretty good, but then the bug like goes in the flower and the flower eats it, and it just looks so bad. And there's just so many just bad looking CGIs. The bad guys, the guys from the Lost Kingdom look just terrible. They look like video game characters. There's a lot of really bad. There's one scene in particular where they show like I think it's Atlantis, and there's like kind of street lights or something kind of in the foreground, and they look so bad. It looks like pre-visual effects. It looks like 1996 PlayStation 1 video game special. I could not, I assume it must be a mistake because when I saw it, I'm like, oh my God, that looks so bad. There's no way they intentionally saw that and left it in. Like they must have did that as previs and they're like, okay, we'll fix it later and then just forgot because I think this is the worst CGI I've seen in a major blockbuster movie, at least recently. I'm sure if you go back, CGI doesn't hold up very well. And I'm sure the CGI on this is probably maybe even better than the original Aquaman, but yeah, it's embarrassingly bad. I feel like it's like the Flash team made the movie and said, "Hey, we made the worst CGI ever," and Aquaman 2 said, "Hold my beer. Let me see what I can do here." And at least in that, like it was stylistic, and you could kind of argue, at least they tried to argue that was an intentional choice. In this, it just looks bad. It just looks really bad. And I feel bad saying that. I know CGI artists are underworked and underpaid or overworked and underpaid. And I'm sure they do the best that they can with what they're able to. And more often than not, it's just a time issue or a money issue. But yeah, I just could not believe how bad the CGI was in this. Just really, really bad. There's also a lot of times where it seems like the actors are just on like a green screen filming. There's times where it seems like the actors aren't even in the same room together or like weren't even there the same day. I'm sure that has a lot to do with logistics and schedules and stuff like that. The humor in this really didn't work for me at all. Like I said, the bug eating thing was okay. The time when he goes to fight Black Manta, and that's about it for me. There were some other people who laughed at some of the jokes. There was one guy down the road from me who seemed to think everything was funny in this. But yeah, for me and for I think most people in our theater, the jokes fell really flat. And again, it just seemed very shoehorned in. Like the interaction with Orm and Arthur as they're walking and he convinced them to eat the bug, that could have been funny, but it just kind of comes out of nowhere. And then they just shove it in there and you're like, okay. And it seems like there's a lot of times where like, yeah, they were just like, okay, we need a joke in here. And they just stick a joke in here. Or I'll have something spray Jason Momoa in the face. Like he gets sprayed in the face like 3 times in this movie, I think. And it's like, okay, is that their only joke? That's the only thing they can do. I don't know. The movie rips off a lot of other movies. They use the Spirit in the Sky song from Guardians of the Galaxy, which Guardians doesn't own that by any means, but it's a little weird to use a song that was used prominently in another superhero movie not too long ago. Randall Park shows up in here. I like Randall Park. He's always good, but he was in Ant-Man, the Ant-Man movies, and he's kind of playing a similar type of character, at least, where I'm like, okay, so you're just ripping off the guy from, and even the beginning of this is basically like the beginning to Ant-Man 3, which was not a well-received movie, so why would you rip that off? That doesn't make any sense. There's some jokes from Iron Man that are kind of stolen, the way that like Arthur will be like, "Hey, tight pants," or "Go back to Azkaban." Like those are very like Tony Stark style jokes, and I know Tony Stark didn't start doing that. I know it existed before that, Die Hard, and I'm sure stuff before, and Spider-Man did it in the comics. But yeah, to me, it just seemed like they're just like, okay, they're trying to just rip off Iron Man for some reason, and then even the ending where he's like, "I am Aquaman," and he like, "Woo!" And I'm like, you're just ripping off the ending of Iron Man. What are you doing? Like I don't understand. How did you guys think this was okay? Like it's weird. And same thing with the music. Like I said, they use Spirit in the Sky. Fine song. I like that song. It's kind of weird. A Jewish guy wrote a song about Jesus, but hey, whatever. Maybe he's not Jewish. I don't know. But they also use Born to Do Well. They use it at the beginning and they use it maybe one more time and then maybe even a third time. Again, I like that song. It's a good song. A little overplayed, a little overused, but it's like, did they just not have a budget for music in this? And they were just like, all right, guys, we got to just keep using Born to Be Wild. That's all we can afford. I don't get it. There's way too much going on in this. It just feels like there's just too much movie. It feels like really they had like two or three scripts and they just crammed them all together. They were like, okay, we got this one script where it's Aquaman and his brother Orm and they have to team up, but they don't want to. Okay, cool. We got this other script where it's Black Manta and he, wants to fight Aquaman. Okay, cool. We got this other script where Aquaman and Mira have a kid and they got to deal with raising their kid. And they just kind of said, "Hey, I like all of it." Just shoved it all together and tried to make it work, and it doesn't work for me. Yeah, like I said, things are crammed in. Jason Momoa gets sprayed in the face like 3 times. First time, oh, baby pees in his face. I get why that's funny. My family has a similar anecdote. I think when I was a child, I did something like that. But then, oh, he dodged it. Oh, she makes it go in his face. Oh, then an ink squirt, the cephalopod or whatever squirts him in the face. Uh, is that, I don't know, just like it's not a very good joke. You really didn't have to use it 3 times. It's like the beach off joke from Barbie. Like, Jesus Christ, guys. Come up with something else. And then why was he so mean to the cephalopod? I never understood that because I don't remember him having any reason to dislike the cephalopod, and it was very helpful and useful. So again, that could have been a fun little interaction too, where they're like, "Hey, getting along with this, octopus or whatever. We got a wacky relationship." But no, it's just kind of thrown away. Same thing with like the Brine King. He's a fun character. He's funny. But he just shows up at the very end for like no real reason. Like you could have had, I wish they would have had more of him in there. And I don't like the title just because I can't remember it all the time. What's it called? Aquaman something? Aquaman 2? Just call it Aquaman 2. That's what it's called. Because I know it does have to deal with the Lost Kingdom, but I feel like it really doesn't deal with that as much. So I don't know. Maybe if you called it like Rise of Black Manta or something like that, that would be more interesting to me. But I don't know. I guess Lost Kingdom is just kind of such a generic title in some ways. Um, so yeah, other than that, movie is directed by James Wan. He did the first Saw movie, Insidious, Furious 7 for some reason, and the first Aquaman. He does a lot of horror movies mostly. Screenplay was written by David Leslie Johnson-McGoldrick. Yeah, that is all one name. David Leslie Johnson-McGoldrick. He wrote Orphan, Conjuring 2 and 3, and Aquaman. And then the story by. So you always know a movie is not going to be good when you have like 4 writers in it. So yeah, he gets the screenplay credit, and then story credit goes to James Wan and David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick and Jason Momoa and Thomas Pa Sivit. So yeah, usually when I see a lot of writers in a movie, that's an indication that there's not like a singular vision. And sometimes with a comedy, it makes sense. You got to get a lot of people in there to throw in jokes, and a lot of times writers aren't credited when they should be. But yeah, this one definitely like. So James Wan and David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick work together a lot. Jason Momoa does have some writing credits. The Last Manhunt and Road to Paloma, but those aren't very well received, and I haven't seen them, and I don't know exactly what his input on the story was. From what I understand, with this one, he pitched an idea for Aquaman 2 after they made the first Aquaman, and that's why he got a story by credit. What exactly he pitched and what of his ideas made it to the movie and didn't, I don't know. In my head, it was just, we need a joke. And he goes, I don't know, something sprayed me in the face. That's funny, right? I assume that was his contribution. Yeah, and then Thomas Pa Sivit, again, he actually isn't even listed on IMDb as writing it, which is weird, but he is on Wikipedia, so I don't know. But his only other credits are Braven and The Last Manhunt, both of which are Jason Momoa movies. So I assume they work together a lot and they're friends. Okay. Budget on this one, $215 million. So far, it's made $120 million. 40 million of that was domestic. So it's going to need to make $430 million to break even. I don't see it happening. It could, but it looks like it's maybe not going to lose as much money as The Flash. But yeah, not good for the. This is the fourth DC superhero movie that came out this year. I always forget them because there's so many of them. But it was this, The Flash, Blue Beetle, and Shazam 2 all came out this year. And I think Marvel had three movies come out this year. So there's a lot of Marvel movie and the Spider-Verse movie as well. A lot of superhero movies coming out this year. Rotten Tomatoes on this one, critics are at 36% and the audience is at 79%. I think when I first looked, it was even lower for the critics and maybe higher for the audience, and they've adjusted a little more. But yeah, big difference here. And I can understand why critics wouldn't like this because it's not a very well-made movie. And I can understand why audience would, though, because yeah, it's kind of fun. I think people like Jason Momoa, so I get that. But yeah, this is apparently the final movie of the DCEU, which is the whole Zack Snyder. I guess it started with Man of Steel. Is that right? No, yeah. So that whole verse of the Man of Steel and the Batfleck and all that stuff, the Flash. Yeah, so they're going to reboot it, restart. I think in 2025 with a new Superman movie. Jason Momoa might show up as Lobo, maybe. I don't know. I think they're recasting everyone, but I'm not sure. Amber Heard does show up in this. Now there's some controversy over her and the whole Johnny Depp thing. And I will say, given some time to think about it and kind of realize what's going on, it does seem like they were both pretty toxic people who were both kind of terrible to each other. So I know there's a lot of people who were upset about her and didn't want her in the movie, and then there's some people who were upset at him, and both people seemed like were being abusive and toxic to each other. Either way, she shows up in this, and I thought she was going to die immediately because they have a scene where she gets hurt and she's like in bed, and I'm like, oh, did they just kill her off? Is that it? They're just like, sorry, Amber Heard, get out of here. But she does show up later, and she's got a couple scenes, and she's pretty good in this, I think. Willem Dafoe was supposed to come back as Volko, who was initially Arthur's advisor, but he had some scheduling conflicts, so he couldn't. So they kind of replaced him with Nicole Kidman's character, who was his mom. Makes sense. She didn't get to see him as a child. She gets to see him now as an adult. But I do feel like Nicole Kidman, although she's good in this, it feels like all of her scenes were shot in like a day. Like she just showed up, did like one take, and they were like, all right, good enough. Sounds good. See you, Nicole. Thanks. And there was supposed to be a Batman cameo in this. Initially, they wanted to have Michael Keaton's Batman show up, and I think Walter Hamada, somebody, one of the guys involved, had an idea to have Michael Keaton's Batman show up in a bunch of these movies to kind of tie them all together. And then they decided not to do that, I guess, after The Flash came out. So then they did a Ben Affleck Batman cameo in this, but then they also decided to cut that out. So now there's no Batman in this. Okay, I don't know. But yeah, for me, I think I really wanted to like this movie. I like Jason Momoa. I like the character of Aquaman, what they've done with it. And I really wanted to get into the sort of like Indiana Jones adventure kind of aspect of the movie. And there were times where they almost did. There was times where it was almost good. And I felt like I almost got swept away and I almost really got into it. But then it just, I don't know, it just didn't work. It just, for me, a lot of things just didn't quite work. The jokes didn't work. The timing didn't work. The tone didn't work. It's just, it's not a bad movie. I don't think I hated the movie, but I was very disappointed by it. And I was very bored, honestly. There was a time watching the movie where I was just waiting for my seat warmer to go off so I could turn it back on. I was hoping the guy down the road would have to get up and go to the bathroom just so I would have something to do when he walked past. I mean, that's how boring this movie was for me. So I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10. And that's probably a little generous, honestly. I was looking through my list. I was going to say it might be my least favorite movie of the year, but then I forgot about Mario, and that movie was terrible. So yeah, it's one of my least favorite movies of the year, though, and it's bad, and it's a bad note for the DCEU to going out on a whimper and not a bang. But I don't know. That's how it is. That's what we're going to do. So if you saw the movie, let me know what you thought of it down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great night. I will see you here again next week.